The fall of Anakin Skywalker is the one story that is both the most well documented and the most misunderstood. His choice had shattered the entire galaxy, uprooted the Republic, which had stood for 25,000 years, and it raised the Order of Jedi Knights to ruin. But this betrayal left behind a mystery all its own, one which was born from a dream. In the silent nights of Anakin Skywalker's room, he would hear his wife wailing, crying out in pain. These visions had occurred once before, bringing about the traumatic death of his mother, but now they had returned again, showing him that his happiness would be taken from him with Padme. Anakin was now spiraling through a series of choices which continually indulged his greed and fed upon his desperation until he was unrecognizable. But through the mists of tragedy, what remains with us is the vile grin of Darth Sidious. The grin that tells Anakin Skywalker the tragedy that he has become, telling him that he is the only one that can save Padme from certain death. This has given rise to the notion that it was in fact Darth Sidious who seeded the visions within Anakin's mind through the dark side. Perhaps he was the truest monster in all of the nightmares, but upon doing our own research into this, we found that this is not entirely true, and that only served to open up more questions. If Palpatine was not the cause of Anakin's dreams, what exactly was? And what role, if anything, did Darth Sidious play in actually creating these nightmares? Well, welcome back to the archives, my friends. It's time once again to open up a holocron and dive into the mystery of Anakin Skywalker's nightmares of Padme. Precognition is not a power that every Force sensitive has, and some receive visions more frequently than others do. Anakin Skywalker, due to his extraordinary connection to the Force as the Chosen One though, was able to receive very clear visions concerning fate. Anakin in particular was someone who cared a great deal about the people that surrounded him. Having grown up in a loving home, he knew how to love those in his life the way that no other Jedi seemingly could. He cared deeply for his mother. He cared for Obi-Wan, Ahsoka, and especially Padme. But this love also bore great amounts of fear for their well-being. Anakin had always wanted to return and to free his mother from slavery, but because he couldn't ever free her, he never truly knew what had happened. It was from this profound sense of attachment, though, and fear, that the Force itself began to respond. We know that the Force can respond to significant emotional experiences even if the user does not intend for this to happen. In Legends, the early story of Darth Bane is a great example. Darth Bane as a teenager had no grasp or concept of the Force, and yet he murdered his own father in a fit of rage, inducing a heart attack. However, from what we've observed, it is not always the dark side that responds to one's emotions. Anakin's visions of his mother's death were not dark side in nature, but they simply were the Force opening a window to her fate through Anakin's fear. The certainty of her death caused the young Skywalker to spiral downward, interfering for the lives of all that were close to him, including Obi-Wan. At one point during the Clone Wars, Obi-Wan was last in the Battle of Jabim and was presumed long dead. Anakin thought that he had watched his master die, but refused to accept it because he didn't feel him die in the Force. Later, Anakin would begin receiving visions of Obi-Wan being tortured, held captive, which in truth, he really was. Ventress had taken and imprisoned the Jedi on a far-off planet. Luckily though, Master Obi-Wan managed to escape with the help of an ARC trooper, and they were later found by Anakin, who disobeyed direct orders from Ki-Adi-Mundi, refusing to believe that Obi-Wan was dead, and instead, Anakin trusted his vision. Again in this instance, his fear and attachment opened a window into Obi-Wan's fate, and this would save the Jedi Master. In both of these cases, it was legitimately the Force itself that was responding to Anakin's feelings that were giving him this vision. There was no illusion or no trickery taking place at all. The same is true for his visions about Padme actually, but that isn't to say that Darth Sidious had no hand whatsoever in what was going on. While Anakin's dreams were truly of the Force, through Palpatine's own gift and precognition, he knew they were happening, and he considered it to be a grand opportunity provided to him by the dark side. In The Dark Lord: The Rise of Darth Vader, we get a pretty explicit insight into the situation from Palpatine's viewpoint himself. The novel says this: Sidious had deliberately brought her and Anakin together 3 years earlier, both to rid the Senate of her opposition and to put temptation into Anakin's path. Following the murder of his mother, Anakin had secretly married Padme, and when Sidious had learned of this marriage, he knew for certain that Anakin's pathological attachment to her would eventually supply the means for completing his conversion to the dark side. Anakin's fears for her, in actuality and in visions, and especially after Padme became pregnant, had been heightened by keeping him far from her. Then, it had simply been a matter of promising Anakin that Padme could be saved from death. The latter, an exaggeration necessary for Anakin's turn. Such was the way of the Force. It provided opportunities, and one needed only to be ready to seize them. In a surprising revelation, Palpatine didn't use any Force trickery or any sort of ritual to invade Anakin's consciousness, but he did foster the environment to make the visions possible and more potent. What began simply as a distraction became a situation that Palpatine could further exploit. The visions were a natural consequence of Anakin's love and fear for Padme, and Sidious simply took advantage of this. He pulled strings in the Clone Wars to keep them far apart. He had her senator duties bound to Coruscant, and kept Anakin fighting in the Outer Rim sieges. When he came back, Padme was pregnant, and Anakins Fear plunged him into deeper nightmares. Then, Darth Sidious was informed by the Force, sensing all of the anxiety of the Chosen One. At that point, it was only a matter of convincing Anakin to compromise his morals left and right, instilling the idea that the Jedi were traitors who could not be trusted, that did not have his best interest in mind. So indeed, Palpatine was not the source of these visions, but he made them much, much worse. Of all the powers in the Force to cause most problems, precognition is probably the greatest culprit. While it or itself is not a bad thing, the actions many take leads others to destruction. This is largely because it is the one ability that is not well understood by either Jedi or Sith alike. Visions granted by the Force are not always certain, but are often cryptic in nature. It is the duty of they who perceive them to decipher the mystery given to them by the Force. Some Jedi seers are able to hone their ability to see the future, to interpret the strange signs given to them. Others are able to see with such clarity that they can know for certain what an outcome of a battle can be, just not exactly how it will happen. Sidious himself was able to conceptualize an outcome and then divide the path necessary to achieve it. This led to the dark side revealing things to him about his enemies, helping him along the way. But not being able to fully understand the nature of a vision is what causes most issues. Visions are not often a certain future, but usually one of many possibles. Destruction is born from those attempts to stop a certain outcome from happening. For this reason, the Jedi are extremely weary of visions and do not often put a lot of stock in them. They choose to flow with the currents of the Force, allow it to move them rather than the other way around. In this way, they believe that they can prevent bad outcomes by not trying to prevent them at all. The Jedi teach that one must allow premonitions to inform one's actions, not in such a way that one attempts to selfishly take control of the future though. It is a balance, which is why the Jedi of the Clone Wars bottled up almost all of the visions and prophecies into a single holocron, and then largely forgot about it. When Anakin took his problems to Yoda though, the Grandmaster inquired about the nature of the premonitions. When Skywalker revealed that they were of pain and loss specifically, but even more than this, someone that he knew, this is why Yoda issued him a stern warning. Careful you must be when sensing the future, Anakin. The fear of loss is a path to the dark side. Many disregard this moment as a piece of Jedi arrogance, or even calloused advice. But truly, Yoda is correct. Anakin, by being selfish, ended up creating a self-fulfilling prophecy of sorts. Anakin misunderstood what his dreams were actually about. The true nature of the vision of the Force that granted to him was not of a certain future, but in actuality, the Force was warning him about the dangers of fear. It was showing him what was going to happen if he continued to allow his attachment to drive him. Had he listened to Yoda's advice, he may have eventually discerned the truth. Luke Skywalker would once ask Yoda, "How will I know the good from the bad?" To which the old master responds, "You will know when you are calm." Anakin needed only to quiet his mind and to search the Force in deep meditation. Unfortunately though, Anakin, by his own admission, has historically been terrible at meditating. This is partially why he's so good at fixing things, working with his hands. In Revenge of the Sith, his attention was being pulled every way. He was being told to spy on the Chancellor, which not only turned his feelings against the High Council, but forced him into a situation where he was spending more time with Palpatine, opening himself up to the manipulations. He never even got the opportunity to sit quietly, or to work through it, to work through his own thoughts. He was sleep deprived, angry. His focus was distracted by his guilt over Dooku, and his conflicted feelings about betraying a close friend. The detrimental warnings of the Force came to him in a puzzle that he had no time to solve. So instead, he acted upon the clues, and fulfilled the very thing that it was warning him against. So anyway, my friends, this was the truth about Anakin's visions about Padme's death. tell us. Had you believed that it was Palpatine doing this all along, causing Anakin to have these terrible nightmares? With Revenge of the Sith having recently been re-released, we've been picking up on a few newer details that we're excited to explore. So if there's anything else that you noticed that you want us to address here, leave a comment down below and let us know. But until next time, my friends, thank you so much for joining us in the archives today, and may the Force be with you.